What if the most successful, the most ruthless organism in your home right now is something you can't even remember the name of?
Honestly, it's highly likely.
Right. Well, welcome to today's deep dive. If you've ever, tried keeping a few potted plants alive on a balcony or just tried to maintain a tiny patch of grass, you know exactly how limited that real estate is.
Oh, yeah. Every inch matters.
Exactly. And we have a really fascinating source today. It's a blog post, and it's titled Notes on Gardening, Part 979, by an author named Ang.
It is such a phenomenal piece of internet writing to examine
Yeah.
because, I mean, at first glance, you were just reading what looks like a simple, kind of mundane diary entry about a stubborn plant.
Yeah, it almost feels like passing visual static.
Right,
But
exactly.
it's actually this disguised masterclass. We're going to explore botanical biology, the hidden aesthetics of nature, and that really incredibly fine line between what makes an herb and what makes a weed.
It really blurs the line.
It totally does. But okay, let's unpack this. Because before we even look at the plant itself, we have to acknowledge the context here. Ang is on part 979 of a gardening blog.
Which is just wild to think about.
I mean, most of us struggle to keep a journal going for like a week. And this author has documented this highly localized, really confined environment nearly 1,000 times.
Yeah, which demonstrates a profound commitment to observation. I mean, Ang is basically curating and chronicling a micro-ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
When you write about a single balcony day after day, you start to notice the invisible architecture of how life fights for space.
And that intense observation is what leads to the central irony of this whole post. Ang is writing about this plant called gripweed, or scientifically, I think it's phyllanthus-niruri.
Yes, phyllanthus-niruri.
Right. And the author admits something brutally honest here. They have documented gripweed before. They actually cite writing about it specifically in parts 335, 377, and 579.
Which is a lot of documentation for one weed.
Yeah. Yet they confess that every single time they look at these plants taking over their balcony, they completely forget its name. They draw a total blank.
I love that detail.
Mm-hmm.
What's fascinating here is that it illustrates a psychological phenomenon called attentional blindness.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so our brains are these incredibly energy-hungry organs, right? And they burn calories just processing visual information.
Wow, okay.
So to conserve energy, the human brain aggressively filters out visual data that it just deems irrelevant. Basically, anything that doesn't offer an immediate threat or a clear reward.
So it basically categorizes the things we see into, like urgent versus background noise.
Precisely. If you are a gardener, your cognitive load is focused entirely on the focal points. You are staring at the delicate tomato plant that needs watering.
Right, because that takes effort.
Exactly. Or a flower you are actively trying to cultivate. Those require intervention. But the gripweed, it's just a constant. It thrives completely without help.
So because it demands absolutely nothing of the gardener to survive, the brain just categorizes it as environmental static.
Yeah, it filters the name and the identity right out of working memory just to save cognitive bandwidth.
That makes total sense, It's
Yeah.
like if you think about your daily commute, you walk past the same fire hydrant or that same quirky architectural detail on a building every single day. It's entirely familiar to your eyes, but if someone asked you to sit down and draw it from memory, you couldn't do it. It's just visual furniture.
That's a great way to put it. Visual furniture. And Ang's relentless documentation of this balcony becomes this exercise in fighting that cognitive filtering.
Right.
They're essentially forcing the brain to remember the static.
Except the problem for Ang is that this particular static is staging a hostile takeover. I mean, gripweed is not just sitting quietly in a corner.
No, not at all.
The post describes how it grows just super aggressively and abundantly across the whole backyard balcony area. It is highly invasive. But Ang doesn't just nuke the entire balcony to get rid of it.
Which is what a lot of people would do.
Exactly. They selectively remove some, but they intentionally keep several pots of it around for evaluation. And the reason why is that apparently gripweed is completely non-toxic to pets and humans.
Yeah, in fact, it is traditionally used as a medicinal herb.
Right. So what does this all mean? Because it kind of upends the traditional gardener's paradigm, doesn't it?
Oh, completely. This raises an important question about how we view nature. We are culturally conditioned to view an invasive plant as a biological enemy, like the instinct is absolute eradication.
Right, because it's a weed, and weeds are automatically bad.
Except weed is actually a biologically meaningless term.
Wait, really?
Yeah, there is no genetic classification for a weed. It simply means a plant growing where a human doesn't want it to grow.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah. The gripweed isn't malicious. It isn't actively trying to ruin the balcony. It is just succeeding in a curated environment where it wasn't explicitly invited.
I take that a step further, actually. We usually associate invasive, unwanted plants with, like, actual danger.
Like poison ivy.
Yes, exactly. Things like poison ivy or weeds that give a dog a terrible rash. Because, plants use chemical defenses since they can't just run away from predators.
Right, they produce toxins to make themselves bitter or dangerous to eat.
But gripweed is safe for mammals. I mean, if it's safe for the dog, safe for you, and it functions as a usable herb, it really blurs the line. It's like a weed is just an aggressive plant with terrible PR.
That's a perfect analogy. It forces the gardener to reconsider that binary of good versus bad. Aang realizes this invader actually has utility.
Yeah.
By keeping a few pots around for evaluation, the plant crosses this boundary from unwanted invader to, like, an unplanned guest. The gardener is choosing to share the limited real estate because the plant brings an unexpected value.
And that value isn't just chemical or medicinal either. There's a huge visual reward for letting it stay.
Yes, the aesthetics.
The post gives us this striking physical description. Gripweed features these feathery green leaves arranged along long, thin stems, and tucked underneath that foliage are these tiny hidden berries.
They're quite beautiful.
They really are. And Aang actually keeps pots of the gripweed specifically to practice macro photography on those berries.
Which they note they will get around to doing once they finally declutter the balcony.
The perpetual promise to declutter.
Right.
It is always happening next weekend.
Always.
But that aesthetic detail, the hidden berries underneath the feathery leaves, it's captivating. It makes me think of finding an Easter egg in a video game or spotting a tiny, intricate carving hidden under a historic staircase.
Oh, I like that comparison.
Because if you just glance at the balcony from the doorway, you just see a mass of chaotic green static. You only experience the beauty of the berries if you physically stop, bend down, and look closely. It actively rewards your attention.
And that physical act of bending down and looking closely, that is the essence of macro photography.
Right.
And it fundamentally changes the human-plant relationship.
How so?
Well, when you use a macro lens, you are magnifying the minuscule, right? You are making it the entire world of the frame.
So you basically lose the context of the messy, overcrowded balcony.
Exactly. You are stripped of the wider environment entirely. You no longer see a plant taking over a pot where it doesn't belong. You just see the geometry of the stem.
The delicate texture of the feathery leaf.
Right, the perfect architecture of a hidden berry. By zooming in, Aang transforms a macro nuisance into a micro masterpiece.
Oh, wow. That's a great way to say it.
You cannot feel animosity towards something you are carefully lighting and bringing into focus. The aesthetics literally save it from the compost bin.
It is a masterful disguise. Because underneath that delicate, super photogenic exterior is an absolute biological juggernaut.
Oh, a total machine.
Yeah. If we pull back from the macro lens and look at how this plant actually behaves, it is ruthless. Aang notes 4 specific traits. Gripweed has a fast life cycle, explosive seed production, rapid germination, and extreme hardiness. It easily outcompetes lawn grasses and ornamental plants. Aang specifically points out that it is choking out their portulaca.
Which is a brilliant contrast to highlight, by the way, because a portulaca is a type of succulent.
Right. They are those low-growing plants with the thick, fleshy leaves.
Exactly. Succulents are biologically designed for slow, very deliberate growth. They store water in those fleshy leaves, they conserve energy, and they just need space and sunlight to thrive at their own pace.
So they're kind of like an established legacy plant.
Yes, exactly.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. Because when I read the traits of the gripweed, the fast life cycle, the explosive seed production, rapid germination, it sounded exactly like an aggressive Silicon Valley tech startup.
Oh, that is a fantastic comparison.
It's totally the botanical version of move fast and break things. I mean, it doesn't spend a season slowly building up a massive thick stem or storing water like the portulaca.
Right. It doesn't plan for the future in that way.
Right. No. It gets in, germinates overnight, scales its presence with explosive seed production, and just completely disrupts the established, slower-moving players on the balcony. Poor portulaca never stood a chance against that kind of aggressive scaling.
It really didn't. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, that aggressive scaling is a masterclass in evolutionary resource warfare.
Resource warfare?
Yeah, because a balcony garden is a strictly zero-sum environment. The volume of soil is fixed. The amount of water provided by the watering can is totally finite. Sunlight is blocked by the balcony railing.
So how does the gripweed optimize for that? I mean, how does it actually achieve an explosive seed production compared to the portulaca?
It all comes down to metabolic allocation.
Okay, what does that mean?
So when a plant like a portulaca or a typical ornamental flower grows, it invests heavily in permanent infrastructure. It uses its metabolic energy to build thick cellular walls, sturdy stems, deep biological reserves.
Basically, it assumes it will be there for a long time.
Exactly. Gripweed does the exact opposite. It operates under the biological assumption that it could be destroyed at any moment.
Oh, wow.
So it diverts almost all its metabolic energy away from building a strong, lasting body and funnels it directly into reproduction.
So it just skips the long-term planning and spams the environment with seeds.
That is exactly what it does. It generates flowers and seeds at an astonishing rate. Every single calorie of sunlight it captures goes into making the next generation rather than fortifying the current one.
That is wild.
And rapid germination means those seeds don't wait for, like, perfect spring conditions. The moment they hit moist soil, they trigger.
Right, they just go.
Yeah. The fast life cycle means it reaches reproductive maturity and drops a new batch of seeds before the gardener even realizes it's a problem.
Which means even if Aang pulls up 99% of the gripweed, that single plant left behind drops enough seeds to guarantee a complete resurgence.
Yep, it is sheer evolutionary brilliance.
Okay, but wait, how is it fueling that incredibly fast metabolism? If it's growing that quickly and making that many seeds, it needs a massive amount of water and nutrients from a tiny clay pot.
It does.
And Aang drops this one specific detail at the end of the post about its biology, noting that the key to gripweed's invasiveness is an extensive, shallow taproot.
Yes.
They point out that even a tiny, fragile seedling has a remarkably mature and well-developed root system. But I have to push back on this because extensive and shallow sound like contradictory terms.
They do sound like opposites, yeah.
I mean, when we hear taproot, we usually think of a carrot, right? A single thick root driving straight down deep into the earth. How can it be shallow?
It sounds contradictory until you map it to the actual geography of a balcony pot.
Okay.
If a root goes straight down like a carrot, it is optimizing for deep groundwater. But on a balcony, where does the water come from?
Well, from the top. From Aang standing there with a watering can, or from rain hitting the surface of the pot.
Right. So an extensive, shallow taproot doesn't drill down. It spreads out aggressively, just millimeters below the surface of the soil. It forms this wide horizontal net.
Oh, I see. It's like putting a thick sponge directly over a sink drain.
Exactly.
If you pour water into the sink, the sponge absorbs absolutely everything before a single drop can actually make it down into the pipes.
That is the perfect mechanical analogy. The gripweed intercepts the supply line. By keeping its extensive root system shallow, it drinks first.
It drinks first. Wow.
Yeah, it hoards the surface-level moisture and the top-heavy nutrients that come from fertilizer, and it literally starves out the competing plants.
Because the water never even reaches them.
Right. The portulaca might have deeper roots, but it doesn't matter. The gripweed creates a drought for every other plant in the pot while keeping itself fully hydrated.
That is incredibly devious. But it raises another question for me. Aang noted that even tiny seedlings have this massive root system. If you are a baby plant in a highly competitive environment, why would you waste all your crucial early energy growing a massive root network instead of just growing taller to capture more sunlight? Wouldn't you want to outreach the other plants?
You would, unless sunlight isn't your primary threat. Think about it. What is the ultimate predator of a weed on a balcony?
The gardener, right. The human hands coming to rip it out of the dirt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The gripweed has evolved to anticipate the human intervention.
Wait, really?
Yes. If a seedling puts all its energy into growing a tall, visible stem, it becomes an easy target. And if its roots are weak, Aang just easily pulls the whole plant right out of the soil.
Okay, I see where this is going.
By investing massive amounts of early energy into a strong, extensive root system right from the seedling stage, the gripweed is basically building an anchor.
So when Aang comes along and tries to quickly pull it up...
The fragile above-ground stem just snaps off in their hand.
Oh.
Yep. But the mature root system remains completely intact beneath the soil. It survives the yank.
That is so smart.
Because it prioritized that subterranean infrastructure over immediate vertical display, it retains all the biological machinery it needs to simply regenerate a new stem a few days later. It is literally preparing for disaster from the moment it sprouts.
It is essentially weaponizing its own fragility above ground to protect its actual core below ground.
Exactly.
Wow. When you step back and look at this entire picture, The depth hidden in a seemingly simple 979th blog post is just staggering.
It really is. We have dissected an entire theater of biological warfare happening in just a few square feet of potting soil.
We really have. I mean, we started with the quirks of human memory, right? How our brains desperately try to filter out the static of our daily lives through attentional blindness.
Right.
And then we moved into the paradox of a plant that functions as a safe, usable herb that behaves like an apex invader. And we looked at the micro-beauty of its hidden berries.
And how a simple shift in perspective through a macro lens can entirely change our empathy for a so-called nuisance.
Yes. And finally, we unpacked the brilliant, ruthless mechanics of its survival. How it intercepts resources with a shallow root net and builds an underground anchor designed specifically to survive being eradicated.
It really proves that there is immense value in paying close attention to the seemingly mundane elements in your own life. Aang's balcony is proof that profound complexity exists in the things we usually walk right past.
Or the things we actively try to get rid of without a second thought.
Yeah. When you take the time to understand the mechanisms of the natural world, it transforms your relationship with your environment. You stop seeing a chaotic mess and you start seeing deliberate strategy.
Which brings us to our final thought for this deep dive. As you go about your week, I want you to consider the persistent weeds in your own life.
That's a great exercise.
Maybe it's a recurring challenge at work, or a stubborn habit you can't seem to break, or even a frustrating dynamic in a relationship. Ask yourself, what is its extensive taproot?
Why is it so successfully surviving in your environment?
Exactly. Instead of just getting frustrated and trying to yank it out immediately by the stem, what could you learn by pausing, looking closely, and understanding the brilliant, if frustrating, mechanics of exactly why it refuses to leave?
The solution always begins with understanding the invisible infrastructure.
We'll leave you to chew on that. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll catch you on the next one.